This time, they crossed the line, I whispered, cradling my 33-week pregnant belly as I climbed the stairs away from my own baby shower. Downstairs, the music had changed from my carefully selected acoustic playlist to my brother's booming hip-hop. My mother's voice carried through the floorboards. We sacrificed so much to help Caleb reach his Ivy League dream. No one even noticed I was gone. But by tomorrow morning, they'd notice something else entirely: 3 white envelopes that would change everything. I started preparing for my baby shower at the beginning of April when I was already huge at 33 weeks pregnant. My little house in the suburbs of Portland, once quiet, was now filled with cardboard boxes, pastel balloons, and Cloud Minus-themed invitations. I didn't hire a planner. No one offered to help. I handled everything myself. Every dish, every ribbon, every soft track, I picked to play as the guests arrived. I ordered a vanilla cake with lavender buttercream from my favorite bakery. Even though I didn't have much of a budget, I still wanted everything to feel right. I chose a light mousse filling, thinking it would be easier for everyone to eat, especially my grandma, who always complained that sweets hurt her teeth. I went grocery shopping early Saturday morning, even though my back ached and my ankles had started to swell. I carried the bags home, arranged everything on the kitchen counter, then sat down and caught my breath in silence. No one asked if I needed anything. My mom said she was working overtime at the school library, and my brother Caleb was getting in the right headspace for his high school spring formal. Still, I kept going. I tidied up the living room, wiped down every window frame, and cleared out all the leftover moving boxes from the corners. I washed the ivory tablecloths and carefully pressed each crease flat. Deep down, I had one small hope. A peaceful afternoon, a little warmth, and a sense of being seen, not as someone who'd made a mistake and got pregnant like Mom once said, but as someone about to become a mother, someone trying to do the right thing for the baby girl growing inside her. I made a playlist of soft acoustic songs. It took me nearly 2 hours to put it together. I wanted the atmosphere to be gentle, the kind where people could sit and talk or listen to the quiet hum of a mom minus to minus B. I imagined my daughter growing up in that kind of calm. The night before the party, I stayed up until nearly midnight hanging tissue garlands around the door frame, strand by strand, using craft store glue. No one held the ladder while I stretched to tie them up high. I just hoped I wouldn't slip. At that point, I still had hope. I believed that maybe just this once they would show up, really show up for me. My mom used to say everything's going to be okay, and I held on to that the way I held the handrail each morning when I came down the stairs. I told myself maybe once they saw all I'd done, they'd smile, hug me, and tell me I did great. I didn't need big words or expensive gifts. I just needed them to see me as part of this family, not the shadow left behind every time it was Caleb's turn. That morning, I walked into the living room and looked around one last time before the guests arrived. The early spring light filtered through the curtains, casting a glow on the sign I'd cut and glued by hand: "Welcome, Baby Emma." Beneath it was a small table with pastries, fruit, and a pot of chamomile tea I'd already brewed. I gently placed my hand on my belly, where my baby had just kicked hard, like she was excited too. I wasn't expecting a picture-minus-perfect party out of a magazine. I just hoped that for a fleeting moment, I could be the main character in my own story. No one interrupting, no one stealing the spotlight. But I was wrong. People started arriving around 1 p.m. First came Aunt Margaret, carrying a small basket full of embroidered handkerchiefs and a few worn children's books she said she used to read to me. Then my college friend Jenny, 6 months pregnant, walked in with a warm smile and a silver mice-wrapped gift box. At first, everything was just as I'd hoped. Soft wishes, gentle laughter, genuine hugs. I thought, maybe this time it'll be different. I started to relax. I even laughed out loud when a 3-year-old, Laura's son, reached up and tapped an angling balloon with wonder. The atmosphere was simple but caring, and I truly believed this was my day, until my mother tapped her fork against a glass. A sharp ting cut through the room and everyone fell silent. She stood there in a teal dress, wearing that familiar smile, the one she always had before announcing something big. My dad stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her back like a seal of support. Before we cut the cake, my mother said in an oddly sweet voice, "We have some exciting news to share." I froze. My heart started pounding like my body already knew what was coming. The kitchen door swung open and Caleb walked out, holding up a bright red envelope. "I got into Princeton," he shouted, his face glowing. The room erupted. Someone clapped. Aunt Margaret gasped, "Oh my goodness, how wonderful." One of my mom's friends even got up and hugged Caleb like she'd raised him herself. I looked around. No one was looking at me anymore. We're at the lavender cake. They all surrounded Caleb, my 17-year-old brother who had never done the dishes or made his bed, and whose tutoring bills I'd paid for the past 2 years. The cake I ordered, with "Welcome Sweet Tim" written on top, was pushed aside to make room for the pizza someone had just ordered. Someone turned on music, loud, bouncy hit, completely drowning out the soft acoustic guitar I'd picked the night before. The laughter got louder, the room filled with stomping feet, clinking glasses, and the sound of Caleb's friends barging in, none of whom I'd ever met. One guy in a backwards baseball cap shouted, "Party's on, bro," and fired up a Bluetooth speaker, bash shaking the walls like it was a graduation bash. I stood there, still holding my lukewarm chamomile tea, the mominos to my nispy sash slipping off my shoulder. No one turned to ask how I felt. No one mentioned the baby. The gifts were shoved into a corner. The Emma banner hidden behind a hand-might-be-strawn sign, "Congrats, Caleb Princeton." A bottle of soda, carelessly opened, spilled across the table, running dangerously close to the cake. I grabbed some napkins and bent down to clean it. My knees throbbed from kneeling, my belly pressing against my cotton dress. As I wiped up the sticky frosting smears on the hardwood floor, a blonde girl brushed past me like I was an old decoration. She didn't say excuse me. I heard Caleb's booming voice from behind, talking about campus tours and dream dorms. I kept cleaning. No one stopped. No one saw me. Everything revolved around one person, just like always. I was used to that. But this time was different. I forced myself to stand, back aching, hands sticky with frosting and soda. I looked around the crowded room, full of people who weren't really there for me. My mother was telling a dramatic story about how she'd sacrificed so much to help Caleb reach his Ivy League dream. My father nodded, like he'd personally raised a genius. No one mentioned the person about to give birth. No one noticed me walking out of the noise, clutching my belly. I went into the kitchen, washed my hands, and quietly climbed the stairs. The music kept thumping downstairs, the cheers drifting up like echoes from another world. But in my head, one thought remained. This time, they crossed the line. And I wasn't going to let it slide like I had before. I sat on the bed, legs stretched out, back propped against a pile of pillows, hands cradling my belly like a silent shield. The laughter rising from the living room felt like dull blades scraping against my chest. Downstairs, the party for Caleb's Princeton acceptance was in full swing. In the house I'd bought with money earned from sleepless nights, packing orders, handling returns, and making it through low sale months, they celebrated a success that wasn't mine. And honestly, it never was. At least not to them. I slowly closed my eyes, trying not to cry. But the memories didn't need permission to return. I remembered being 11, and my favorite purple princess dress being shredded by school scissors. Caleb was 9 then. When asked, he just shrugged and said, "I didn't take care of it." My mother waved it off, told me not to be dramatic. "It was just a piece of fabric," she said, "and you need to learn to let things go." Caleb got taken out for ice cream right after. "To forget the fuss," she said. When I was in 8th grade, I was selected to attend a gifted science program at the local university. I brought the invitation home, excited to show my dad. He skimmed it, then asked one question, "Does it cost money?" I nodded. He shook his head and told me to focus on more practical things. 2 years later, when Caleb got accepted into a robotics summer camp, my dad didn't hesitate. He pulled out a check right away. "It's an investment in the future," he said. I lost count of how many times I did chores alone, while Caleb played video games all afternoon. I used to think if I worked hard enough, I'd be recognized, but no. When I cleaned the whole house, my mom said, "That's what girls are supposed to do." When Caleb remembered to water the plants once, she praised him for being thoughtful about nature. Then when I was 19, I decided not to go to college. Not because I didn't want to, but because no one supported me. I once mentioned studying graphic design, but my mom shook her head. "Drawing won't feed anyone," she said. "You should get a stable job." So I applied at a print shop and spent my evenings building an online store, selling handmade decor. I did everything myself. Learned product photography, SEO, customer service. No one asked if I was tired. When the store started bringing in steady income, I saved enough to put a down payment on this little house. The one I live in now. The one they moved into without asking, after I gave them a tour to show off what I'd accomplished. I remember my mom's face so clearly. First surprise, then tears, then a soft whisper, "So, the whole family finally has a home." No one asked if I wanted to share. They just brought their things in, rearranged the furniture, and called it our house. Caleb, then a 10th grader, already had a brand new MacBook my parents bought him. I was still using an old laptop I salvaged from a repair shop. I once paid to fix Caleb's car after he dented the back door on the way to tutoring because my mom said he's still young. It was just an accident. I still remember going to my first trimester ultrasound alone, driving nearly an hour to the clinic. When I told my mom I was pregnant, she was silent for a moment and then asked, "Does the baby's father know?" No congratulations, no hug. That night they brought it up at dinner. Caleb laughed and said, "Wow, guess I'm going to have to share the I'm Guinness Fi with the baby now." Every time I think about these things, I ask myself why I kept giving. Maybe I hoped they'd notice, that they'd change, that they'd love me the way I kept trying to love them, despite everything. But there's one thing I don't hope for anymore. I bent down, opened my nightstand drawer, and took out a gray folder. Inside were the house deed, utility bills in my name, and a file I'd been quietly preparing for weeks. Bold, clear words. Undeniable. I ran my fingers over the first page, feeling like I was touching something sacred. Proof that I hadn't imagined the unfairness. I didn't want to cry anymore. I just wanted to reclaim my space. The next morning, just as the sun began to rise, I was already up. The house still carried the sticky smell of spilled soda and melted frosting from yesterday's party. I stood in the kitchen, holding a warm cup of peppermint tea, feeling nothing but stillness. In the breeze coming through the window, I could hear Caleb's steady snoring from his room, in the creaking of the wooden chair in the living room, where my dad usually sat each morning with his lukewarm coffee. I wasn't hesitating anymore. I pulled 3 white envelopes from the kitchen drawer. Each one was sealed, labeled clearly Diana, my mom, Mark, my dad, and Caleb. Inside was a copy of a 30- to vacate the premises, along with a property deed showing I was the sole legal owner. I placed them neatly on the dining table, the same one where they always left dirty dishes for me to clean. Among the leftover mess from the party, the 3 white envelopes stood out like slashes across velvet. I didn't wait long. At exactly 7:15, my mom walked into the kitchen, her hair still messy, holding a mug of soy milk. She yawned, her eyes scanning the table. Then, stopping. "What's this?" she said, still groggy, but I heard the edge in her voice. She picked up an envelope and tore it open right there. After just a few lines, her eyes widened. Her mug tilted slightly, almost spilling. "Oh, son," she called out, louder now. "This has to be some kind of joke, right?" I stepped into the room from the hallway, calm and steady. "It's not," I said. "I've already sent the official letter. These are just copies for the family." She looked at me like I'd just announced I was selling the house to strangers. "Move out? How could you write something like this? This is our home." "No, Mom," I said, looking her in the eye. "This is my home. I bought it. I pay the mortgage. I cover the utilities, the internet, even a plumbing repair you called an outrageous couple hundred a few weeks ago. It's all me." My dad came in from the living room, still groggy, but frowning now as he looked at the papers on the table. He grabbed one, skimmed it, then turned to me. "What kind of stunt is this? You're pregnant and now you want to cause stress in the house?" "It's because I'm pregnant that I can't keep living like this," I said, placing a hand on my belly. "I don't want my daughter growing up in a house where her mother is ignored and walked over every day." Caleb finally wandered in, hair a mess, headphones still around his neck. He looked around and asked sleepily, "What's going on? Why is it so loud?" "She's kicking us out of the house," my mom hissed, her voice sharp like metal scraping glass. Caleb looked at me like I was some villain in a movie. "Are you serious? Just because I got into Princeton yesterday, that was no big deal." I let out a dry laugh. "It's not just because of yesterday. It's because of every day before that. Every time you got favored and I was told, 'You're the girl, you should be more understanding.' Every time I achieved something and Mom said, 'Don't brag too much.' When I got pregnant, everyone acted like nothing happened. But when you got that acceptance letter, the whole world stopped spinning for you." My dad tried to smooth things over. "Come on, Allison. Everyone says things they don't mean. Don't blow this out. You're calling the years I spent being treated like a maid blowing things out of proportion?" I cut him off. "I paid for this roof. But Mom told the neighbors the whole family built this together. Caleb wrecked his car, I paid to fix it. And Mom scolded me for bringing it up too much. No one ever asked if I needed help, if I was tired, if I was okay. And then when I threw a party for myself, the whole family turned it into someone else's stage. No one said anything for a long time. No one could argue. I looked at my mom, now trembling, eyes wide with disbelief. I'm not doing this out of hate. I'm doing it out of love for myself. And because I refuse to let Emma grow up in a family where everything comes at the cost of silence and sacrifice. Caleb took a step back. So, where are we supposed to sleep? At a hotel or something? I've planned it, I said. I have a list of short-term rentals. Movers if needed. One of my friends even offered to help pack. You have 30 days. My mom stared at me like she had no idea who I was. Maybe she never really did. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving behind stunned faces. Each step I took was a reminder of something they couldn't undo. This time, I wasn't backing down. This time, I chose myself. In the days that followed, the house felt like water stretched tight before a storm. No one said anything direct. But every slammed door, every side glance, every heavy step in the hallway sent the same message. They weren't leaving without a fight. My mom started her emotional campaign the way she always did. She called Aunt Hannah, the only relative in Arizona I still talked to, and tearfully told her I was kicking my parents out while pregnant. A day later, I got a long message from Aunt Hannah. Sweetheart, no matter how upset you are, don't let your daughter grow up without her grandparents. Family is forever. My dad took a different route. He suddenly started doing chores, things he hadn't done in all 24 years I lived with him. He wiped counters, took out the trash, even tried chatting with me in the mornings. Did you sleep okay? But I knew exactly what that was. Not guilt. Strategy. A way to soften me, to pull me back into the dutiful daughter role they had always assigned me. Caleb didn't bother hiding his hostility. He started blasting music in his room, slamming doors every time he walked past me, and didn't hold back with snide remarks at dinner. One night, as I was arranging flowers on the table, he walked by and muttered, "Not sure how you plan to raise a kid when no one's around to help wash the dishes." I didn't respond. I just quietly tucked another sprig of lavender into the vase. Then things went beyond what any family should tolerate. One Tuesday morning, I received an email from a major supplier, someone I was negotiating with for a potential partnership next quarter. They said they'd heard some things from a relative about me, showing signs of emotional instability, and possibly being unfit to manage operations after giving birth. I sat frozen in my office, staring at the flickering screen. Then exhaled slowly. I knew exactly who was behind it. I printed the email and filed it into the gray folder, the one where I kept all legal documents. I'd hired a lawyer the week before. She was a friend of an old friend, well us versed in legal eviction processes in Oregon, and not swayed by pleas like, "But they're your biological parents." But I didn't get angry. I didn't call to confront anyone. I just forwarded the scanned email to my attorney, along with the records I'd been collecting, utility bills, home repair receipts, the mortgage agreement, even photos of the house when I moved in, completely empty before they arrived. On day 17, my mom started crying loudly every evening. She didn't talk to me directly, just made dramatic laments in the living room about sleepless nights worrying about Allison, about thankless sacrifices, and the night she stayed up when I was sick as a child. I walked past, noise-canceling headphones on, and kept updating the baby registry on my laptop. On day 20-1, Caleb tried playing the responsibility card. He sat across from me in the kitchen, for the first time since getting the notice. "If you kick us out, I'll have nowhere to study," he said, voice trembling. I could lose my scholarship. I might not even get to go to Princeton. I looked at him, not angry, not sympathetic. I know how that feels. I didn't have anyone supporting me when I wanted to go to college either. And you know what? I still made it. On day 20-4, they stopped talking altogether. No more crying, no more guilt-tripping, just a heavy silence, thick like fog. The kind that doesn't lead to reconciliation, only quiet preparation for the inevitable. I kept everything going as usual. Work, rest, prenatal checkups. My best friend Clarissa came over a few times to help set up the baby's room. We played soft music, chatted about baby names, and picked out a few wall decorations. I tried to build a small world for my daughter, one where no one could take away my role as her mother. Day 30 arrived on a calm, sunny morning. I woke up early, not out of worry, but because my body had grown used to the peace of not being interrupted. They packed in silence. My mom walked the hallway with a stiff expression. My dad said nothing as he dragged suitcases down the stairs. Caleb, the last to leave, stood in the doorway with his backpacks, slung over one shoulder, staring at me. "You'll regret this," he said, voice dry. No one's gonna stand by you forever. I just nodded. And I don't need anyone standing beside me to be myself. The door closed behind them. And for the first time in years, the house felt bigger, brighter. Not just because the furniture was gone, but because the heaviness had left with them. It's been over a year since that door shut behind them, and my little house has finally learned how to breathe again. Every morning, I make coffee in a kitchen that's no longer cluttered with dirty mugs or misplaced dish rags. Every night, I rock Emma to sleep in her room, glowing with soft light, her name hand-bina stitched and hanging on the wall, not hidden behind a congrats Caleb banner or anyone else's shadow. Emma is a calm but fierce little girl, with my eyes and the same dimpled cheeks my dad used to have. Every time I look at her, I know I made the right choice. Not because of what I avoided, but because of what I've built. A real home. My business is steady. After giving birth, I took a month off and returned gradually. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I've hired a delivery assistant and a part-time order manager. My small online shop is now listed among the city's trusted local businesses. I'm not chasing flashiness, but it's enough to keep me from worrying about bills anymore. As for my old family, news still trickles in the way it always has, through distant relatives who don't really care about me but love to gossip. I heard Caleb dropped out after his first semester at Princeton, not because of grades, but because he couldn't handle living on his own. He wasn't used to cooking, doing laundry, managing his own schedule, or handling anything I used to silently take care of. While his classmates were applying for internships, Caleb was still struggling to build a timetable that didn't have overlapping classes. I didn't feel vindicated, but I wasn't surprised either. After leaving my house, my parents moved in with my uncle in Salem. According to a cousin on my dad's side, they were given a small room and asked to get back on their feet. But within 6 months, tension erupted. My mom complained that the kitchen wasn't clean enough, while my dad refused to chip in for the electric bill, citing financial hardship. In the end, my uncle, once incredibly generous, asked them to leave. Since then, they bounced around, sometimes in cheap motels, sometimes crashing with acquaintances, but nowhere lasted long. They never contacted me again, and I didn't try to reconnect either. Sometimes I still think about them, not with bitterness, but as a clear reminder, not every blood tie comes with real love. I gave them countless chances. I kept quiet, kept giving, sacrificed even the smallest things, hoping to be seen, to be acknowledged. But that recognition never came. Only growing entitlement and ingratitude. I don't regret letting them go. In fact, it was the first time I chose myself without asking for permission. One early autumn afternoon, with the leaves turning on the trees out front, I pushed Emma's stroller to the park near our neighborhood. She loved the rustling leaves, watching squirrels dart past, and would giggle every time I whistled at the sparrows. People say time heals all wounds. I don't fully believe that. What healed me wasn't time, it was action. It was standing up, clearing out the toxic space around me and saying enough, even when my voice shook. Emma is growing up in a kind of gentleness I never had. She'll learn that love doesn't come from silence or submission, that a woman doesn't need to carry an entire family to be worthy of affection, and that sometimes strength doesn't mean towering through. It means knowing when to let go. One day, while putting away her toys, I opened an old storage box and found a few baby shower cards from last year, some messy handwriting, a few generic wishes, and a handful of gifts I couldn't even remember who gave. I thought about throwing them away, but instead I placed them back in the box. Not because I missed them, but because I wanted to remember that I had once hit rock bottom and climbed out on my own. No one lifted me. I walked one step at a time. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't forgiveness. It's letting go. Not every relationship is worth keeping, even when it's bound by blood. When you choose yourself, you're not being selfish. You're saving your own life. I didn't just reclaim my home. I reclaimed my worth. I proved that peace doesn't come from enduring in silence, but from setting clear boundaries and believing in yourself. What if my daughter asks about her grandparents someday? I'll tell her the truth. That sometimes family isn't who you're born to, but who you choose to keep in your life. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away.